Imagine dragging a dead pope out of his grave, dressing him in full papal robes, and putting him on trial. Sounds impossible? It happened, and it shocked the world. This shocking event is known as the Cadaver Synod, a bizarre moment in the history of the Catholic Church. It took place in 897 CE and remains one of the most bewildering incidents in papal history. Why did it happen, and what can it teach us? By examining how Pope Formosus was put on trial months after his death, we gain perspective on how power and politics can drive people to extreme actions. Understanding strange episodes like this can help us think critically about leadership, the abuse of power, and how historical narratives are shaped. To understand the Cadaver Synod, we need to know the chaotic context of the late 9th century papacy. This period was so turbulent that popes came and went at a dizzying pace. Between 872 and 965 CE, there were 24 popes, and between 896 and 904, there was roughly a new pope each year. Rival factions of nobles in Italy battled to control the papal throne, turning the position of pope into a political prize. It was a time of intense intrigue and power struggles, where alliances shifted quickly and church leadership changed often. Amid this turmoil rose Formosus, a talented churchman who became pope in 891 CE. Earlier in his career, Formosus had been a bishop and a papal envoy, but he fell out of favor with Pope John VIII and was excommunicated in 876. He was later pardoned and allowed back into church service, and eventually he was elected pope. As pope, Formosus found himself entangled in a political conflict over the imperial crown. He sought to free Rome from the grip of the Spolitan rulers, Emperor Guy II of Spoleto and his son Lambert, who had significant influence in Italy. To challenge them, Formosus invited King Arnulf of Carinthia, a Frankish ruler, to intervene in Italy. In 896, Arnulf marched into Rome, and Formosus crowned him as Holy Roman Emperor, hoping Arnulf would secure Rome's independence from the Spolitan faction. However, Arnulf's campaign failed. He was struck by paralysis and had to retreat, leaving Rome again in the hands of Formosus's enemies. Shortly after, in April 896, Pope Formosus died, with a political conflict unresolved. The Spoletan faction, Lambert and his powerful family, quickly regained influence in Rome. They installed one of their allies, Stephen VI, as the new pope, after a brief reign of an interim Pope Boniface VI. Formosus had sided with their rival, and now he was dead. But the new regime was not content to let Formosus rest in peace. Why would a new pope be so intent on condemning a predecessor who was already in the grave? The answer lies in raw political revenge and a desire to discredit Formosus's legacy. Stephen VI and his backers wanted to undo Formosus's decisions, like his crowning of Arnulf and appointments of bishops, and send a message to any who opposed them. In January 897, Pope Stephen VI convened a tribunal in Rome to put his dead predecessor on trial. In an almost unbelievable scene, he had Pope Formosus's corpse exhumed from his tomb and brought into the Basilica of St. John Lateran for a formal ecclesiastical trial. The nearly 9-month-old corpse of Formosus was reportedly dressed in papal vestments, the robes of a pope, and seated on a throne before the assembly. Imagine the macabre sight, a deceased pontiff propped up in front of everyone, silent and decaying, yet about to be judged by the living. A church deacon was appointed to speak on behalf of the corpse, effectively to act as Formosus's voice in this gruesome parody of a trial. What could a dead man possibly be accused of? It turned out Pope Stephen VI had a list of grievances against Formosus prepared. Perjury, violating canonical law, and illegally acceding to the papacy were among the charges. In essence, Stephen claimed that Formosus had never been eligible to be pope in the first place, due to earlier oaths and appointments, and that all his acts as pope were therefore invalid. The trial itself was essentially a spectacle of humiliation. Pope Stephen VI, filled with rage and theatrics, interrogated the corpse of Formosus, shouting questions and accusations. The deacon dutifully provided answers on behalf of the dead pope, as if Formosus were responding. Not surprisingly, the outcome of this grotesque trial was a foregone conclusion. Formosus, unable to defend himself, was found guilty on all charges. Pope Stephen VI then pronounced that Formosus's papacy was null and void, meaning every appointment and act of Formosus as pope was retroactively canceled. To drive the point home, the corpse was subjected to symbolic punishment. Stephen VI ordered that Formosus's papal vestments be stripped off once again. He also had the corpse's fingers of consecration cut off. These were the 3 fingers Formosus would have used in life to give blessings. This was a brutal way of saying that Formosus had never truly been pope, not even able to bless. Finally, as the ghastly finale, Formosus's defiled body was cast out. Initially, the corpse was buried in a common grave, but rumors say it was soon dug up yet again and thrown into the Tiber River that flows through Rome. Stephen VI and his supporters had made their point. They had publicly erased a rival's legacy, or so they thought. The Cadaver Synod was shocking, even to people in that violent age. It was so extreme that it left clergy and commoners in Rome bewildered and disgusted. The spectacle of a pope ranting at a corpse struck many as a gross abuse of power and a desecration of the church's dignity. This leads to an inevitable question. Did this grisly spectacle achieve its goal? Or would there be hell to pay for such an outrageous act? The fallout was swift and dramatic. The immediate consequences of the Cadaver Synod were as chaotic as the event itself. Far from securing Stephen VI's position, the macabre trial turned public opinion in Rome against him. The Roman populace and clergy were outraged at the desecration of Formosus's corpse. According to records, rumors even spread that Formosus's body, after being tossed into the Tiber, washed up and began performing miracles on the riverbank, a sign to many that the dead pope was vindicated and that a great injustice had occurred. Whether or not the rumors were true, the people's anger was very real. By the summer of 897, anger boiled over into rebellion. A public uprising erupted in Rome. Pope Stephen VI was deposed, forced out of office, and imprisoned. The same fate he imposed on Formosus's corpse, degradation and disposal, now awaited Stephen, at least in a figurative sense. In July or August 897, Stephen VI was strangled to death in his prison cell by unknown parties. His reign ended ignominiously just a few months after the Cadaver Synod. It seems that putting a dead pope on trial was a step too far, even in those unruly times. After Stephen VI's fall, the church moved quickly to correct the bizarre injustice. Pope Theodore II, who became pope toward the end of 897, convened a synod that annulled the Cadaver Synod. He rehabilitated Pope Formosus's memory and restored all of Formosus's acts and ordinations as valid. Formosus's body was fished out of the Tiber, or retrieved from wherever it had ended up, and reburied with honor in St. Peter's Basilica, dressed again in pontifical vestments. Early in 898, Pope John IX, 897 to 900, further affirmed this reversal. He convened councils in Rome and elsewhere that confirmed the nullification of the Cadaver Synod, ordered the trial's records destroyed, and even forbade any future trial of a corpse. The church essentially admitted that the Cadaver Synod had been a horrible mistake and took steps to ensure nothing like it would happen again. Indeed, there has never been another trial of a dead body in Catholic history since. The main players met varied fates. Formosus, though degraded in death, ultimately had his papacy restored to honor, and he rests today in St. Peter's. Stephen VI became a cautionary tale, his name blackened by his outrageous actions and his violent end. The Cadaver Synod also left a stain on the Church's history, frequently cited as an example of medieval papal corruption and the extremes of political vendetta. Yet by confronting and correcting it, the Church in the 9th century showed an ability to self-correct, albeit after great damage had been done. In summary, the Cadaver Synod was a strange and grotesque chapter in history where political revenge was carried beyond the grave. A pope's corpse was put on trial in a bid to erase his legacy, only for the spectacle to backfire horribly on the perpetrators. This event highlights the intense power struggles of its era and shows how far leaders will go to assert authority, even to the point of defying basic decency and sense. By looking back on the Cadaver Synod, we are reminded to think critically about how power can corrupt and how historical narratives are often shaped by those in control. It's a story that, despite its macabre details, can teach us about the importance of justice, restraint, and the rule of law, even for those at the very top. Thank you for watching. If you found this video informative, please like it and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more insightful history stories, and don't forget to check out our next video. There are many more fascinating and sometimes unbelievable historical events to explore. See you next time.